Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We are thrilled to have you here today for this architecture conversation. My name is Austin Barron Bailey. I serve as Chief Curator for Crystal Bridges in the Momentary. And before we begin, I'd like to start with our Indigenous Peoples Acknowledgement. At Crystal Bridges in the Momentary, we recognize our role as settlers and guests in the Northwest Arkansas region. We acknowledge the Caddo, the Quapaw, and the Osage, as well as the many Indigenous caretakers of this land and water. We appreciate the enduring influence of the vibrant, diverse, and contemporary cultures of Indigenous peoples. We are conscious of the role in colonizations that museums have played. As cultural institutions, we have a responsibility to engage in the dismantling of historical and systemic invisibility of Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future. We choose to intentionally hold ourselves accountable to appropriate conversation, representation, connection, and education to facilitate a space of measurable change. Thank you. On behalf of the museum, I am delighted to welcome you all to this one-of-a-kind discussion among our campus architects Marlon Blackwell and Wesley Walls, and our theme of designing for health and wellness. Before we jump into the conversation, I do want to extend our gratitude to those who have made tonight's program possible. To Peter McKeith and the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design at the University of Arkansas, thank you for partnering with us on this lecture. And Peter, special thanks for moderating tonight's conversation. To Ken and Liz Allen, sponsors for architecture programming at Crystal Bridges. And to Andrea Albright and Mailco USA for their continued sponsorship of our lecture programming. I also want to recognize leaders joining us this evening from the Heartland Whole Health Institute, Art and Wellness Enterprises, and the Alice L. Walton School of Medicine. The discussion tonight will give you a first look at the architecture of the Heartland Whole Health Institute designed by Marlon Blackwell and the Alice L. Walton School of Medicine designed by Wesley Walls. To introduce Blackwell and Walls and moderate the conversation, I have the pleasure of welcoming Peter McKeith, Dean and Professor of Architecture at the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design. A nationally recognized design educator and administrator, McKeith has served as the 5th Dean of the Fay Jones School since 2014. During his decade of leadership, the school has grown significantly in student enrollment, faculty appointment and accomplishments, curricular programs, diversity initiatives, community engagements and outreach center, external funded research, and new facilities. McKeith is also a nationally recognized leader in advancing the cause of a forest-centered culture and economy and the cause of a wood product-centered approach to architecture, engineering, and construction. He is currently guiding the design and construction of the Anthony Timberland Center for Design and Materials Innovation at the University of Arkansas. McKeith has also led, organized, and curated architecture exhibitions that highlight the vitality of contemporary architecture, especially in the American South. And at Crystal Bridges, I'm extremely fortunate that he's also serving as consulting curator of architecture for the museum. This evening's lecture is an outcome of our collaborations, as are new educational initiatives for our staff and volunteers, an exhibition design seminar at the university to inform Crystal Bridges' reinstallation and expansion. But our signature collaboration is indeed historic. McKeith is the lead commissioner for the U.S. Pavilion for the 2025 Venice Architecture Biennale, together with co-commissioners Design Connects and Crystal Bridges. Centered on the emblematic phrase, porch, an architecture of generosity, the U.S. Pavilion exhibition will be a demonstration of architecture and design accomplishments from across the nation, addressing issues of civic engagement, community building, and climate change. We couldn't imagine a better moderator for tonight's discussion, Designing for Health and Wellness. Please join me in welcoming Peter to the stage to introduce Marlon and Wesley. Thank you.
Good evening, responsive audience. No, good evening, responsive audience. There we are. It is my pleasure to be here in this role as a moderator for what we hope to be a series, in fact, of collaborative and partnered lectures between the Fay Jones School and Crystal Bridges. I'm very grateful for the invitation to serve in this advisory role. Very grateful to Rod Bigelow and to Austin Bailey, and to so many here at the museum who've welcomed me since my conversations began 10 years ago and with increasing intensity over the last year. And as Austin has said, there are many, many projects underway, not least, of course, being next summer's exhibition on behalf of the United States at the Venice Biennale, which I have to add is the first time institutions from the heartland of the United States are being represented at what constitutes the Olympics of world architecture. But closer to home, I would say we are already engaged in Olympian architecture, and that is what is on task for us this evening. If I could have my first slide, or maybe I can do it myself. There we are. I was taught by a wonderful book, then a movie called The Garden of Good and Evil, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. A fantastic character exclaims, "In the South, there is no such thing as coincidence." There is no such thing as coincidence in the cause of health and wellness, certainly as a school, as a museum, as a region. And as a dean for the last 10 years, while some might say I have argued most stridently for a wood-centered culture, I've also argued that, in fact, the School of Architecture and Design could be better understood as a school of health design. Because, as they say, and this is, in fact, Winston Churchill who says it, we shape our buildings and afterwards they shape us. I think Alice Walton might agree that we shape our buildings, but afterwards they shape our health and our wellness going forward. And that's the cause that brings us here tonight, the joint cause of design towards health and wellness. I've posed a number of questions to our faculty over the last 10 years, trying to stimulate them into the sense that they can contribute to the state, to the citizens of the state, to the good of the region, to the larger goals of architecture altogether, societally. One of them is this question here: what does it mean to be a school of architecture and design in a state with urgent healthcare and aging issues? What does it mean? How do we act? How can we prepare our students for that world? How can we help citizens already now, even while our students are in school and our faculty are undertaking their research and creative practice? This is one of a series of outreach areas that we've emphasized, including housing design, preservation design, community design, health and wellness certainly centered in them. And it is one of the reasons why we have a Master of Design Studies program with a concentration in health and wellness design, to which we are now admitting students, all in the cause of bettering society through architecture and design. But it is no coincidence that we are here tonight to talk about this, because this is, of course, now a central mission largely for the region and certainly for this museum, and now embodied on the entire campus. My next slide, please. I know I can do it myself, but there we are. So we are gathered here for this presentation this evening, Design Excellence in the Cause of Health and Wellness, Designing for Whole Health. We'll have two case studies. One, the Heartland Whole Health Institute, designed by Marlon Blackwell Architects, principal designer Marlon Blackwell, together with A.T. Blackwell. And then secondly, the Alice L. Walton School of Medicine, designed by Polk Stanley Wilcox Architects, principal designer here with us, Wesley Walls. Following short presentations, each about 20 minutes, we'll then, the three of us, sit here on the stage, have some moderated dialogue that I'll facilitate, and then we'll reach out to you in the audience for your questions and comments and observations. I have to take a quick survey. It is true, of course, that the state of Arkansas does not rank highly in healthcare indicators. That's an objective set of facts. But let's make this personal. Here, who among us is concerned with health and wellness? That's what we're doing here tonight. This touches all of us. It's real, it's phenomenal, it's tangible. And let's listen attentively as we try to understand the relationship between the built environment embodied in these two wonderful structures and in the thoughts of their architects, and how this ultimately will bear upon our own lives going forward. So with that, I'll provide two introductions and then a quick understanding, perhaps all too quick, of whole health as a guiding concept. Marlon Blackwell, FAIA, is a practicing architect in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and serves as the Fay Jones Distinguished Professor at the school. He has taught at our school for 33 years. And in 2020, he was named the SEC Educator of the Year. The Office of Marlon Blackwell Architects received the 2016 Cooper Hewitt National Design Award, has been ranked #1 in design as part of Architect Magazine 50, and was recognized as Firm of the Year by Residential Architect Magazine. Marlon himself is the recipient of the 2020 AIA Gold Medal, the Institute's highest honor, which recognizes those whose work has had an enduring impact on the theory and practice of architecture. He was a 2019 Resident Fellow of the American Academy in Rome, inducted into the 2018 National Academy of Design, and received the Fay Jones Gold Medal from the Arkansas AIA in 2017. Now, Marlon references in this biography an early work monograph entitled An Architecture of the Ozarks, but we will talk about a more recent monograph in the lecture. But altogether, it's a great pleasure, even for me, with Marlon as a colleague on a daily basis, to hear him talk about his work in this context. Wonderfully, we're also joined by an alumnus of the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design, graduate from 1992, in the before times, Wesley Walls, AIA, a native Arkansan. Wesley has been captivated since childhood by both the natural and built environment. With a strong commitment to design, he's helped elevate Polk Stanley Wilcox to a higher standard of excellence, and under his direction, the firm has been recognized for its architecture through numerous state, regional, and national design awards. With more than 30 years of experience, his award-winning portfolio has primarily focused on large institutional commissions, such as Camp Commons at Camp Aldersgate, the state's first LEED Gold building, the UAMS College of Public Health, the Psychiatric Research Institute at UAMS, and so forth. Wesley's leadership extends beyond his firm, having served as president of the Arkansas chapter of the AIA, president of our own school's Professional Advisory Board, and his recent term as president of the Arkansas State Board of Architects, Landscape Architects, and Interior Designers. Ladies and gentlemen, these are two servant leaders that we will hear from this evening. Next slide. Now, I'm not asking you to read this, and there will be no test following this, but I wanted to indicate to you what is available to everyone on the Heartland Whole Health Institute website, already in action. And here the key phrase, the key sentences there at the bottom of this slide, that the ambitions between the Whole Health Institute and the Alice Walton School of Medicine is to, in effect, redesign how medical education is taught and to redesign the delivery models. And in so doing, the Institute, the School of Medicine, and health system partners can create and be a model for healthcare transformation, bridging the gaps to better health together. This word, powerful word, redesign, is so compelling, and I'm quite sure is very motivating and inspiring for both Marlon and Wesley. But one last word of counsel as we go in, and my last and final slide. Thank you. One more slide. There it is. What is a whole health approach? You may well wonder, but here too we are redesigning together, all of us, with leaders in front of us, a whole health approach that puts the patient at the center of a collaborative, preventative, and value-based care model. Whole health considers the needs of the whole person with the goal of preventing disease, improving health outcomes, and sustaining wellness. Let those words resound as we hear these two case studies in approaches to whole health design. First to present is Marlon Blackwell on behalf of the Heartland Whole Health Institute. He'll be followed immediately by Wesley Walls, and we'll go immediately from there into moderated conversation. Again, thank you so much for this privilege, for our collaboration. I look forward with all of you to this evening's presentation. Marlon, if you will.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you all. Thank you for the honor of being able to share a project and a process we've been, I think, working on almost 5 years. It's hard to be, it's flown by, but it's been a great opportunity. Before I get going, I just want to go ahead and do the shout out now to all those from MBA and my partner Ati. We've been working collaborative as a team, as you know, and Wesley will tell you the same, that no one person does it. It's a collective. We also have Troy and members from Baldwin Shell here too, who've been a great partner in all of this, trying to manifest the reality and the mission of the Heartland Whole Health Institute. So let's see if I can get this to work. Yeah, here we go. All right, well, I'm going to dive right in. So about that monograph. Well, about 2 years ago, for instance, Architectural Press put out a new monograph on our practice, edited by no other than Peter and McKeith and John Bolkins. And I've been lecturing around the country, and every time I come to a place, they said, "Aren't you from Arkansas?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how do you have a radical practice in Arkansas?" And I said, "Oh, well, we're not necessarily talking about the avant-garde or revolution, but we use the word radical in its 14th century origins as an adjective from the late Latin word radicalus, meaning root. So as in relating to or proceeding from the root or roots. So in many ways, it's a fidelity to our roots, to the fundamentals that we believe is necessary for us to effect change and transformation in the places we work and in our own place. And in Thoreau's words, heaven is under our feet as well as above our heads. And so we really take great pride in that this is a project that is born of its place. So we got to thinking about radical practice, and there's a whole building type, which is healthcare facilities, that demands a thinking in many ways about radical health and how that can come about. And we've been very interested in this somewhat impoverished building type about how we can contribute, how we can ask the question, how might it be otherwise? And we've had a few opportunities in our lead up to the opportunity with Whole Health. Smaller projects, but projects nevertheless that contribute to our community. Like the, let's see if I can get this thing to work well, yeah. Like the Free Health Center in Fayetteville, which serves the underserved in our community. Another is the Harvey Pediatric Clinic in Rogers. And one that we're currently working on with the UAMS, which is the Orthopedic Sports Medicine and Therapy Center in Springdale, Arkansas. And these have all been kind of iconic, contributions and will be in the community. And really what a lot of it is about spatial dignity and how we can begin to rethink this idea of transforming the hospital into the hospitable. And I think it's very important that we do that because it has a lot to do with well-being and such. But we never had the opportunity to engage an institute that is committed to whole health, to not just the idea of treatment, but the idea of preventative health care. So this idea of a holistic approach to health and well-being that, as we said, begins to provide focus and access to the physical, mental, emotional well-being through health management. But it's not just awareness, right? It's also the Institute, the Heartland Whole Health Institute, is about action and education with access to art and nature and wellness that is extremely important to healthy, well-rounded lives. And the key is education and awareness for individuals to be responsible for their own health, preventative health, and self-care, and hopefully change the trajectory of healthcare systems around the world. That is a big mission. Well, we got to look in a little bit of research and looking at health outcomes, and health outcomes are mostly, only determined by 10 to 20% of actually medical care. It's what happens between doctors' visits that really have an effect on one's health outcomes. It's the whole, lifestyle and all those social drivers that really are the things that are being taken into account now through the Heartland Whole Health Institute mission. So the mission is really about promoting resilience, preventing disease, restoring health, and empowering individuals to take charge of their own health care. So When we look a little bit deeper into the Heartland Whole Health Institute, there's a whole set of issues of payment models, policy and public affairs, researching technology, none of which I know too much about, but there is this regional engagement that's a big part of it. And so in many ways, that's where we began in thinking about how we would engage the Institute and our place. And we like to say the work that we do here in Northwest Arkansas, wherever we work, is in the place, of the place, and for the place. We begin with where we already are very often. So the question is, how does a building reflect the value of its institution? And that, to us, was something that, a question that we sort of took on when we first did that. And the first thing that occurred to us is that we need to be good neighbors. We're on the Crystal Bridges Art Museum and campus, and this is kind of the nerve center of that campus. And this idea of having an access to art and nature, well, it's a great resource here. So we wanted to be able to connect and create resonance with this. I remember when Alice was looking at our competition, winning competition proposal. She was very nice. She leaned over and said, you know, I really like your concepts, but I don't like boxes. We made a lot of nice wood boxes. So we had to rethink about how we would approach this to resonate with the existing Crystal Bridges Museum. As you can see here in the upper left, and then Heartland Whole Health down in the bottom here is the way it begins to respond to the landscape, art park, and then up above is Awesome, which Wesley will share with you, which is also currently in construction, sort of kind of a zoomed in version. So our thought was to take some basic principles of how to enter into the project. One of the things that's very important for us is approach. We know that there's a lot of mobility happening between the new parking garage over where the museum is, of people walking or riding a bike or getting a lift over to the museum. And we realized that this would act as an extended threshold into the campus. And as well, it needed to flow. We really needed to soften the edges. We needed to get out of the box, bust open the box, and kind of minimize right angles and try to just really soften things. And natural light is really key too, to always have connection wherever you are in the building with natural light. And the scale, the proper scale and proportion that creates a kind of harmony between the body and the space itself. And of course, views, always constantly in touch with views of nature. This is all kind of demonstrated research in terms of built environments that provide a more productive and healthy work environment and living environment. So we were very mindful of the placement. So we were in the old surface parking lot, which is all those cars have been moved. So which is right up next to the big ravine that literally connects our site to Crystal Bridges and the whole pathway or network of pathway journeys that move through that. So we wanted to respond to the ravine and connect to the trails, again, to act in ways, allow the building to act as a framework of connectivity for people coming and going on the campus. And extend the forest, again, so we wanted to restore the site back to its original idea of the forest with event spaces as well as the forest itself. And so the building in many ways is a response to these ravines as it sits elevated above with ideas around refuge and prospect, but then by elevating, we create shadowy and shaded areas below. And so this is basically a drawing of the sort of captures the initial gesture of wrapping itself around the ravine to create public and open space for everyone who comes and goes, as well as for the different visitors to the Institute itself. Now, as we all know, we live in a beautiful place in the Ozarks, in this beautiful karst topography and our wonderful hardwood forest. And as Peter will remind you, we are 60% forested as a state. So we were very mindful of again, the sort of geological aspects and the fauna of our place. And I also remember my good friend and mentor, Fay Jones, used to always talk about this idea of the cave and forest that kind of gave him some ordering principles in his own work. And so we kind of fell back on that a little bit, is that how do we begin to extend the topography, this karst topography, up to act as a base, of kind of foundation for this institute, as well as this idea of the forest and its filtering of light in the upper floors of the Institute as well. And so we're also mindful, too, that our cash crop in Northwest Arkansas is rocks. We have a lot of rocks. That's why you don't have a big agricultural base and got really thin soils if you've ever tried to grow anything up here. But we saw that as a positive because we wanted to return to origins in some ways and to the vernacular as a source of inspiration. And if you remember, a lot of folks, if they needed to build something here in Northwest Arkansas or Southwest Missouri, they would just take whatever they found in the fields, the rocks, and stand them up and put these big, mortar joints and hold them together and just, make buildings out of what they had. And so this is affectionately known as giraffe buildings, giraffe stone buildings in this neck of the woods. So we thought we would kind of be inspired by this, but actually represent it on our own terms as, again, this sort of foundational base for the institution, that's our own sort of set of clefts and caves for the base. And then we began to look at the forest and the striated bark of the forest and began to think about an analogy with the wood. For performance purposes, we needed something more durable, so we began to look at pre-weathered brass. So something that would have some sparkle to it, some vitality in the surface, but we could turn it into a beautiful brise-soleil to control the sun on the east and west sides, right? And which is very critical. And that way you get the natural light without the glare. And so that was part of our system of articulation for the building. And then we beveled each of those fins, right, to catch the light or the shadow. And so over the course of the day, the facade slowly changes and flickers. And it's really imbued with what we like call the order of change. And it kind of responds to the pulsating of the forces of the day and the season. So this is our palette, the material logics that come from the material culture of this place, the stone and the forest here in brass, and this new way of kind of doing it with rope joints and a whole different kind of mix of stone and size of stone coming from down around Paris, Arkansas, and just across the border in Oklahoma. And so how to distribute that, worked with Baldwin Shell to make these beautiful one-to-one mock-ups to test ideas, make sure we got those correct before we did the final deal, and make sure everything comes together. You can kind of already see the flickering in the edges of the fins and how that's distributed on the upper two floors, and then how it's distributed on the base and the ground, on the stone. And we needed spaces that flow. I went back to Alice's idea that, that we had to break out of the box. And so you'll see very few right angles. Everything has to flow both into the ground floor and also out of it. And a lot of great public functions on this ground floor, again, acting as a kind of type of dog trot or threshold into the campus. But you have this beautiful lobby, a community room, a cafe. You have a pre-function space that acts as a type of art gallery, basically an event space, a conference center. Again, it's about education, information, and awareness here. Multi-function space, and then outside, event spaces, event terrace, event lawns, and then some very nicely shaded porches and covered areas too for programming. And so this is a kind of a representation of that giraffe stone, the portal that takes you into the site in a symbolic way, but also into the Institute itself. And here you begin to see it. So this stone base is kind of gently curved too, to greet you, the community room, and as you come through, and then a counter curve with the upper spaces with all in their administration offices, as well as art bridges, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. And here it is today. So what I've done is interwoven shots from the construction site as recently as we can get, but it's really starting to come together. And I always like to hear it when people say, wow, these look better than the renderings. So we either need to work on our renderings or just keep the buildings going really great. But we really love how this is coming together. Some of the best, I have to say, rock work that I've seen anywhere in my career. Really fantastic. And then just some of the renderings with these beautiful covered shaded areas that create other sort of passages and connections to the pathway journeys. And then you can actually see how that's coming together as well. The thing that we've realized is where there's people, where there's shade, there's people. And so these are going to be natural gathering spaces for people on their bikes or riding. The mobility that it encourages, I think, is really important. Connection to place, natural light, the views, and then spaces that flow, and then creating an ecosystem of art. And so with that comes this community porch that kind of unites the upper floors, art bridges with all, the administration offices, and then there's down below the nice shaded areas. And it's all shaped and wrapping this ravine as it begins to terminate at the top of the hill. And here you begin to see that. And like I say, it never looks the same at any time of day because the sun constantly moves and these fins are always flickering. And here the sun, so we really look for very great opportunities to allow for views, not just from the inside out, but also from the outside in. So really turning the building inside out to create an interface, right, and a sense of transparency in the Institute itself. And then as you come upon the stone and the shade and shadow, the pattern, the texture is really enriches, I think, that relationship that people can have as they come into and along the base. Now, this idea of communing with nature, the idea that we are mentally and spiritually more at ease and better when we're in nature, or at least have a visual, physical connection with it, is very important to how we thought about the interior. I know Ati, when she started to think about the interior, she naturally thought of kindred spirits, which, as many people know, is the painting by Asher Brown Durand, who's a member of the Hudson River School of Painters, and is probably one among the most famous of Alice's acquisitions for Crystal Bridges. But it contains, in many ways, everything that we had hoped for in how the interior could be, with its varied colors, many colors of nature. Nature has so many colors. It's not just green and brown. It's so subtle and nuanced. And the mossy stone and this idea of an American landscape in refuge and prospect. And so from that, we were able to develop a whole palette of natural and healthy materials, everything from stone, natural stone, wood, wool, felt, metals that naturally weather, lime-based plaster, even the carpets, which are healthy as well. They have multiple colors, but they don't off-gas. Everything is thought of in a more natural and direct way. And then with this, we use the colors of nature, right, in all of the surfaces, but also in the furniture, too, to bring in color, which is really important, to move us away from the institutional aspects you find in healthcare, which is, the white box, or everything based on hygiene. Here it's based on the emotions and the spirit and the feeling of that. And of course, with this too, becomes the whole idea of the forest that makes its way in with the stone floors and this beautiful CNC milled pecan canopy that organizes all of the spaces below in every single floor. It also acts to cover all of the infrastructure, AC ducts, electric, everything, and just creates a beautiful built environment, creates an acoustical shroud that helps with sound absorption. So it's doing a lot of things. It's a great value proposition. This is just a recent photo of it coming together, and it begins to move and shift as you move through it as well. The cafe here, a great place for connection with other folks, the sharing of potentially of ideas and possibilities, and how that's coming together as well. Which again, you can see the distribution of art and color. And then as you move through the pre-function space, also another place to gather, great digital art at the end and hung art along the side. So it really should be a place that encourages both places for reflection, for solitude, as well as for fellowship in these sort of conference areas as well, and gathering spaces. Immediately adjacent, connected to nature, easy to get to in the terraces outside. This is the Awe Administrative Center here, but it also comes with open workspace, very few closed rooms, and got an outdoor terrace, take a lunch out there, exercise, a meditation space, and of course the community porch out on the end. So various spaces where you can get outside, get views, get fresh air, all come together. And the natural light, because the building is relatively thin along the east-west, we get plenty of natural light from both. This is really critical because it really reduces the energy cost relative to the artificial light we need, but it really, I think, again, creates a kind of healthier environment. And you can see it kind of coming together here. So a great deal of flexibility and flow in between the different conference room figures. The break room adjacent to the open office, again, everything just sort of flows together, again, with great views and natural light. And then in a section, we have the outdoor terrace, the event space below, but open office and meditation, same as sort of between these spaces. So you can get outside, really beautiful space that's very flexible for a variety of events. And then a meditation space, which in effect is a 30-foot high cone that's bent to the north to capture the north light. This is a place with its own anti-space that you can come in, decompress, remove your shoes, and come in again, a place for solitude or a place just to be with others. Thanks to Baldwin Shell, we figured out how to build this. Very counterintuitive. We thought you would build from the bottom up. No, the best way is to build from the top down. And so that's how they built this, and it's kind of really come together quite lovely, and it's making a wonderful space. It's a little bit further along than what we're showing here, but it gets this beautiful light from above. It's mysterious light without ever seeing the sky. So it really becomes a spiritual place in a more prosaic setting. And then art bridges. And art bridges, I just love the mission of this, of in a whole national institute that's about getting art, out of the archives, out of the basement in museums, and into communities, and sharing that art with other museums. And I think this is great, and this idea of wellness is dependent on the access to art as well, and this is the mission up here with its boardroom, break room, open offices as well. And again, you can see the distribution of art and color and the colors of nature as well. And then again, places to converge and have great social moments. The idea of art too, we've had the great opportunity to work with the curatorial team, Crystal Bridges, walking the site, working with Alice and her team as well, to where does art go? So art is on the outside as well as on the inside. So wherever you go, you have those aha moments, those wonder moments that put us in another state of mind, that take us out of this often numbingly instrumental world in which we occupy into a place that's otherworldly. And again, we do that as well on the inside by turning the building inside out. And really, in many ways, it is designed from the inside out as well as the outside in. And the Heartland Whole Institute really is both a platform for and a physical realization of the Institute's mission to move health beyond illness treatment and into holistic well-being. And all the spaces I've shown, the materials, the forms, they're all drawn from the site's karst topography and Ozark forests to enhance the connection to nature, community, and place. And I just love the fact that it provides an alternative approach to healthcare that unites art, architecture, wellness, and nature, that forms an atmosphere of dignity, hope, and empowerment to nurture the whole self. And finally, I just want to thank our team here. I just sort of list all of our team that's been working this last 5 years, the consultants, our contractors. It's been an incredible effort and teamwork to make this rise and come to fruition. And without further ado, I thank you, and I welcome Wesley to the stage. So thank you.
Always have to adjust these upwards. Stunning work, Marlon, as always, and expected. And it's an honor to be here. And as Dean McKeith and as Marlon have both already eloquently stated, tonight's presentation is really a focus on health and wellness. And I hope, as you've seen with the Institute project that Marlon presented and that you discover within our presentation here about the medical school, that is the relevance of both of these projects to the subject at hand. So let's begin. We believe that at its origin, architecture is a social act. It's a contribution to the public realm. It's a deposit or insertion into the built environment, and that doesn't happen without impacting both our social fabric and the individual experiences that we have. Buildings do have consequences, and we believe that buildings can be in communion with nature and that they can connect with communities in meaningful and impactful ways. And if that's true, and we believe that it is, the question that we have to ask ourselves is this: can a building help foster a healthier community? Can architecture play an impactful role in shaping our community and creating a healthier environment, or in promoting whole health practices and improved wellness for our state and region? And for me, this question about architecture and its role in promoting a holistic view of healthcare didn't start with this project. It started about 20 years ago when we had the opportunity to design the new College of Public Health at UAMS. This was a building that housed a new academic curriculum that was dedicated to studying and addressing some of the things that Peter mentioned at the beginning of tonight, these significant health disparities that we have across the state and region. And just like the new Walton School of Medicine, we were designing a brand new building really in parallel with the creation of an entirely new college. So the seeds of this long arc of inquiry regarding the interplay between wellness and design were planted a long time ago. When we were engaged to design the new School of Medicine, we were once again confronted with this intersection of architecture and health, of design and well-being, of art and wellness, if you will. And while the traditional approach to healthcare and its education is largely reactive to health outcomes and events, of course, we're talking tonight about to being proactive, being engaged with, but not just the physical, but the mental, emotional, and social well-being of each and every one of us. And so it aims to promote a healthy environment and a healthy lifestyle as a methodology to prevent disease by considering a person's, each of those attributes of each of us that we deal with. So in practice, this means that health outcomes are often driven by these things. They're often driven by connection to nature. It's often driven by access to education and to art. It's driven by this foster of social networks and how that impacts health, active lifestyles, and connections to community. But in execution, in this social act that we talk about of designing a significant new piece of architecture, we felt like the building had an obligation to not merely just promote these attributes, but to fully embrace them within the work. So a bit of context, Marlon had this similar image you can see here. Of course, he has presented the Heartland Whole Health Institute there on the bottom of the screen. But the new medical school is directly east of our position here, and it really bridges that gap between the North Forest Trail and J Street itself. In the original design brief, Alice described her vision for the school using some of the following words: community and connection, words like Ozarks, modern, flexible, creative, inspirational. And those are pretty significant and were pretty instrumental in shaping the design, but by far the most significant statement from the original requirement was this: to consider creative ways to screen the building from Crystal Bridges Museum. And I think as you'll discover as we move forward, that this charge had a pretty significant impact on the entire design of the school. So in pursuit of the goal to create connection to nature and community as a health initiative, we began to explore how the natural and the developed intersect and how we might link the park and the community. And in the pursuit of this charge to screen the building from Crystal Bridges, our original concept really invited the park to extend east onto the site to create this physical connection, if you will, between the natural and developed and from forest to city. And then this park extension, we then gently elevated it to the east. So we extended the park visually and physically as you viewed it from the west, from the North Forest Trails, while revealing the new structure to the community as viewed from J Street. And this gesture then allows community access, as you can see, under and through the project and into the site. And so it in and of itself embodies some of these principles of access and connection and movement. So this section through the Crystal Bridges Ravine, this sort of diagram, reveals how the idea of manipulating the site and building form begins to create this interplay between nature and nurture, between action of participating in the building and also the protection of the building, and then activity and shelter. This building is really, in essence, a piece of the landscape. That was the original idea, not just of this immediate site, but of the Ozarks at large. So how did all this come together? We pursued this through a design competition, and our strategy for the original submission was really involved embracing a pretty ambitious, expansive scheme. And we really did. We challenged ourselves to find the extent to which the building and the site were really indistinguishable from each other, both physically and philosophically. And we felt that blending nature and community by blurring that line between the inside and the outside would be a really meaningful way to embrace whole health principles by promoting this connection with the site and this active lifestyle. So this was the original concept, which was pretty bold. You can see that's a pretty substantial cantilever, but it was this big idea of providing access under and through the structure and to the site. And thankfully, Alice shared our enthusiasm for the project. But as we were awarded the commission, she challenged us to find a way to embody these concepts in a more practical, more efficient approach. And she was right, and we did. And I think it's a better project for it. And so we opted to figuratively and literally condense this concept down to its essence, sketching through ideas that were more sculpture in nature, this carving away of the bedrock, so to speak. So rather than this broad serpentine gesture of the original concept, we envisioned the site intervention as this dense solid block of limestone that we then elevated out of the ravine, and then we center cut through it, and then we again raised this northeastern corner to provide shelter and create this community access through the site. So like the original concept, we were intentional about bringing the park onto the site and physically onto the building, creating this idea about really natural connections to the site and to the park. And again, we elevated the structure as it moved east to provide to screen the building from the park, and then allowed site and programmatic forces to lift this corner up. And really we looked at it like this sort of cantilevered vein of Ozark ledgestone, this abstracted bluff shelter that creates a protective canopy, creating this community connection through and into the site. And again, this is a strategy that embodies these whole health principles of access and connection and movement. So this concept of, and it's interesting how this relates to some of the original strategies that Marlon described, this concept of abstracting natural features as a building typology was largely influenced by my own childhood of exploring the Ozarks with my father in his 1971 Ford F-100 and camper shell. That was both our mode of transportation and lodging. And these natural limestone bluff shelters can be found all over the Ozarks. There's Rock House Cave at Ozark Point. There's Rock House at Pettigene, which is where I took this photograph. There's Cobb Cave at Lost Valleys. That's very near to here. Many of you may have seen that. And they've been in use for more than 10,000 years by people that came before us, really as places of refuge and safety. They were considered sacred spaces, places for healing. So borrowing those 10,000-year-old concepts, we conceive the building's east facade, its abstracted promontory, if you will, as a modern-day place of gathering, of shelter, of healing, and perhaps even a 21st century sacred space. So all of these notions sort of led to this modern angular edifice, sheathed in a slightly more mirrored glass in pursuit of this idea of reflection, really an opportunity to consider oneself in context of their place in this park, and in turn, in their place in this collective community. We were intentional about limiting our material palette on the exterior to just three things: natural brass and precast and glass. And viewed from the north here, you can see that the composition reveals its form as this cleft of Ozark limestone, abstracted, if you will, in this textured precast concrete, stretching outward and upward as an extension of the park into the community. And so all of this culminated into this new design for the School of Medicine. As viewed from the northeast above J Street, it's evident that the building is really essentially a seamless extension of the North Forest Trails, terminating into what we call this promontory of contemporary healing as viewed from the community, as viewed from J Street. If you look the other way from the southeast to the northwest, you can begin to reveal how the geometry of the park rolls clockwise up and terminates at this full 4-story south wing of the school. But at street level, as viewed from really the community from J Street, the school again rises out of the ground, creating this natural shelter clad in satin brass over these twin reflecting pools. As noted earlier, this facade is intentionally designed to really reflect the park and the community lawn, which is ultimately, in our idea, this idea about a reflection of the broader participation we have in our own community. One of the primary drivers of this site was this beautiful alley of existing trees that lined up straight off J Street to the west, and you guys, many of you may have remembered that. It seemed like this natural gift to orient the project about that, sort of a sign from Mother Nature, and then Mother Nature took them out in the tornado. So we lost a really prized natural pre-existing condition, but thankfully they're being replaced, and they're going to be strategically positioned so that it screens the parking lot generally from view, and then opens the community lawn up to views of the campus. And of course, other site features are, where's the laser pointer? That is not it. That goes back. Are the healing gardens, the winter terrace. There's a teaching farm west of the building. You can see there's this idea, this bike grotto that moves under the tail of the building that links the north and south parts of the site, the pond terrace. So there's a lot of unique destinations for visitors to the site. And as we move this view plane up, this aerial view highlights, again, the elevated park that winds its way clockwise up the school from the woodland ramble at the west base all the way up to, here we go, all the way up to the Sky Meadow, all the way up to Prospect Bluff. And the number of outdoor features and opportunities to connect to nature, they're pretty extensive, and they're intentionally unique to blur the lines between building and site and between interior and exterior. Again, reflecting in our mind this holistic concept of connection to nature and promoting this active lifestyle. So the new alley of trees will center on the opening under the entry, drawing you up and through this 21st century sacred space. And as you come in under this abstracted canopy, this abstracted bluff shelter, you can see this woodland amphitheater that really occupies this space between the wings of the building that's flush with landscape, with a water feature, with access to the outdoor patio and cafe on level 2, at which point you can continue back down to the North Forest Trails or wind your way back up to the top of the building. The building geometry is a bit complex, and hopefully these are sort of these architectural images that can be confusing, but this is a section perspective as if you were to cut through the building east-west, and this is looking north, so you can begin to see how, let me go back, how the landscape climbs up to this 4th level here, and this is the entrance to the clinic here. And the same section, turn around and looking south, you can begin to see here the entrance to the school, but this is the woodland amphitheater that leads up to the 2nd level cafe that can be accessed both by visitors from the outside and of course by occupants of the building, and then you can follow this back down to the woodland, the North Forest Trails. So from a plan perspective, just some quick diagrams. Level 1 is primarily encompasses the practicum portion of the program, of the academic program, with the clinic entrance to the north and this public gallery to the south. And again, you see how this grotto allows one to move through the site, so we don't allow the building to become an obstruction to participating in the space. Level 2 is primarily focused on student pedagogical spaces, but it includes the cafe that opens out onto the plaza itself. Level 3 has administrative support space and a primary focus on student areas and student lounges and study areas with their own patio. At level 4, again, as the building rises with some more growth and future support spaces. Much like Marlon talked about, a lot of our focus on the interior finishes was built around this idea about connections to nature. And so you can see this top row was sort of our reference to how nature provides color and texture, and then the bottom row represents finishes that we selected for the project that include rift-cut white oak, satin brass, terrazzo, and other finishes to draw that link out to nature. The main entry to the school opens onto this large public gallery, a space that borrows both the geometry and the materials from the exterior, with this backlit rift-cut white oak and this backlit brass paneling here. And this space is designed to be as flexible and multi-use for larger events such as lectures and social events. So the building's geometry, again, is a bit unique, so we had to be creative about how we use this, and this gave us an opportunity to create this link between this public gallery space that moves up to, and its overflow seating for events, up to the second-level library and to other public spaces. And you can see how that view down allows you to sort of perceive how that space works here, connecting up to level 2. Back on level 1, there's a dedicated clinic. This space is similar to the public gallery in form and material, but our finishes and colors differentiate that in a way. And of course, the clinic's designed to appeal to patients and visitors from really every walk and phase of life, including, so as a gesture to include this play space for kids built into sort of this, again, this creative use of the building geometry. The second level library that overlooks that public gallery below integrates both traditional print and digital media, in addition to providing ample study spaces for students. Of course, the building contains numerous seminar and classroom spaces that are perhaps more typical, but it also includes these large team-based learning halls, which are unique spaces to the pedagogical program of the new school. And the cafe, with its terrazzo flooring and glazed tile and slatted wood ceiling and these brass accents, again reinforces this natural color and finish palette. The Student Center on level 3 occupies this bridge. That's going to be a great space for all those who attend school, and these views to the west, hopefully to Crystal Bridges and to the trails, are going to be pretty phenomenal. Moving back outside, the Healing Gardens on the south side of the building, designed by our partners in the project, OSD, are intentionally therapeutic. This enclave that's actively designed to reinforce this connection to nature as a strategy for whole person well-being. In the pond terrace, this focal point for paths around the northwest edge of the site that leads back to Crystal Bridges and the North Forest Trails. And you can begin to see the other end of that bike grotto that slips under the tail that's clad in brass, as well as an indicator. And then the Woodland Ramble, where the building emerges from the forest on the west end, which really brings us full circle back to this original charge to screen the building from Crystal Bridges. And we're anxious to see how this develops and it feels to meet that mission. So, construction progress. This is scheduled to finish next summer. I've decided to collect all these construction images at the end to show. These are some recent drone shots, aerial shots. These are a couple of weeks old, so they're not completely current, but this is a view you can see looking west. This was the original alley of trees that were here. But you can see how this will continue to be designed to draw you through and up under and through the building back to the park. This view looking south, you can begin to see how the building grows out of the ground as it moves to the east with this, again, this textured precast paneling here to sort of represent this abstracted limestone. And again, views looking back to the east, you can see how the tail begins to emerge out of the ground. You can see some grading beginning to happen on all the landscape and design of this rooftop park. And as we zoom in, you can begin to see the complexity of this green roof system with this geofoam landforming elements installed by our partners at Ozarks Green Roofs and supporting roof contractors. They're doing a fantastic job on this. And just wanted to let you know, this roof is 2 acres in size and will have over 90 trees as part of this space. And it's going to be one of the largest green roofs in the country and will be the largest in the center of the U.S. So it's a pretty impressive feat for this team to be able to provide that. So this more recent aerial begins to reveal this folded plane geometry of the south facade and its layering of this natural satin brass sun shading system And you can see here this lower half is a vertical section of unitized curtain wall with a 16-inch deep perforated brass, but the upper half folds out as it begins to respond to the geometry of the building as it rotates around to the front, and that's clad with this solid natural satin finished brass that's 24 inches deep. And here you can begin to see sort of the texture and reveals the form of that south facade as it begins to come together in the project. And certainly, like Marlon, I just wanted to make the point that it's my privilege to stand here today, but a project this complexity takes a huge team of people to make it happen. We've got a great team at Polk Stanley Wilcox. All of our consultants are doing a fantastic job. Crossland's doing a great job building the project, and we wouldn't be where we were today if it weren't for the work of a large number of people committed to delivering a quality project. So what's next? Well, we were graciously awarded the recently announced residential complex. It's adjacent to the Crystal Bridges campus. This is going to contain 2 structures, one for students and another one for area residents, and is going to include 300 units ranging from studios to 2-bedroom units. It's an 11-acre site, and you can see how it sits directly across from the school. But the great thing about it is it's positioned not only to serve the school, but it's close enough to downtown Bentonville that it's going to serve as a great regional space for housing, which is, of course, in need in Northwest Arkansas. So, to close, back to our initial inquiry, can a building help foster a healthier community? Well, we're doing our best to not only promote wellness, but to, again, this idea of embracing it. And we embrace it through this idea of movement through the site and the park, and a call to more active lifestyle. We're embracing it through connection to nature, to community, to ourselves, and to something beyond. And this idea of embracing access to art, and to wellness, and to education, and ultimately this idea of reflection of ourselves in our respected place, in our community, and in our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. As I said earlier, I have some prepared questions for both Marlon and Wesley, but then I also want to make sure that there are sufficient time for questions from all of you. One of the themes that you both touch on is the idea of deriving design inspiration, even design formation, from natural reference, from the landscape, both of your childhood, of the locality. And this is in real distinction to at least the modern history of design for medical facilities, which has usually fallen into one of 2 categories. Either the model is of a machine for hygiene, or it makes certain reference to a kind of anthropomorphic structuring, that there's a head and there's a spine, and we can talk about a medical facility in that more diagrammatic but still anthropomorphic reference. You set aside both of those references. It's neither machine nor in some sense referencing human anatomy. It's nature. And I wonder if each in your own way, if you could comment on the making that choice and how that made such sense and how it has provided you with the context really for decision making.
You know, I think even referencing indigenous peoples, you know, they certainly made reference to the healing power of nature, and that's something that we drew upon. I think there's been lots of data that would show that this idea about getting back to nature and views to nature, being able to experience nature, outdoors, landscaping, and that kind of thing can be a significant source of healing. It's really part of that space that you referenced, Marlon, outside of that 10 to 20% of active healthcare. It's part of your wellness and the actions that you take as people that impacts your health. And I also think part of what drove us was I think really Alice's vision, both with this project and the way she challenged us to really reflect the Ozarks, be reflective of this region and this place and the culture that's here. And I think that spoke to us a lot about embracing natural landforms and sort of a connection back to nature as a form of healing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I let out with this idea about place, but in a lot of ways it's really about returning home, coming home. We're all in some ways search of home. And, coming back to nature as a kind of inspiration. I mean, all the research, as you said, have been done. It firmly demonstrates, natural light, views, well-proportioned spaces, color, all of that in a certain built environment. The staff are more productive. Doctors have places to go. They don't have to leave the building in between appointments or surgeries or such. Your patients feel welcome, and there's almost a kind of Zen-like feeling when you come, rather than the chaos you often get in clinics, that aren't well planned and so forth. So, I mean, I think that was part of it, but we were really driven to create an ecosystem or environment, and so trying to remove all of the sort of infrastructure that you often find, the ducts and the structure and all of that stuff, kind of making that go away and really putting you in touch with the material itself, stone, the natural colors, the wool, the felt, the pecan, all of these things that in some ways I think can spark memories from our own childhood, or just from being good times of being in nature. So it has a very emotional effect, and I think it makes us have a sense of gratitude in a way. And I've heard it say gratitude and angst don't go very well together. So environments can create angst, or they can create gratitude, and I think nature helps us bring us back to a position of gratitude.
Well, I would propose it's a extremely important distinction for students of architecture, and all of us as students of architecture, to think through the implications of setting aside a machine-centered metaphor, even a human-centered metaphor, so to speak, but actually to take a nature-centered metaphor, as you say, a more ecological approach to design altogether. And to my mind, this then raises the importance and relevance of your collaborations with landscape architects, and with your constant references to the exterior, the grounds of both of these facilities, and how important that has been. And again, each in your own way, if you could comment on your collaboration with landscape architecture, and then the strengths that the exterior landscape provide.
Absolutely. Well, the landscape architect that we're working with is Michael Boucher, who we've worked with before here in Northwest Arkansas, has also worked in Bentonville with family as well. He has a great talent of, rather than being in the forefront, being in the background and being nuanced. He's a craftsperson of great detailing. We had a site that we felt we needed to restore and regenerate. It was a surface parking lot and disturbed. And so bringing back the forest, bringing back these, the indigenous grasses, but also the more kind of formal event lawns, so there, again, we've had mixed programming. We have a park too in the southeast corner of the site, so that people can move through and around, but there's a much more nuanced relationship. Much like Wesley, we had this beautiful wall of trees along the west that created this great space between the ravine, the building with the lawns in between, that also got hit in the tornado, and we lost about half of our trees. So there's a lot more sun in there than shade, but we'll bring that back over time. But I can't imagine, for me personally, architecture is not about a building or about a site. It's about the studied relationship between the building and the landscape. I don't think you could call it a true work of architecture without it, and I can't imagine not working with a landscape architect to make projects happen. So I think this landscape that we'll have, that will be a great companion to the Institute, will be something that's subtle and nuanced and gracious.
Well, obviously, from our first gesture in response to sort of our design pursuit for the project, it involved this sort of ambitious idea about extending a park, making this rooftop green roof. So our involvement with our landscape architect was very intense, and it's been a great partnership with OSD. I think Alex Hyde with OSD is here tonight, and Simon David, who started that firm, are very, very capable. We've had a great working relationship with them. They're very, very talented. They've partnered with us in helping make this a reality, and so I think even more than usual, and we always value our consultants, but just by nature of this design solution, our involvement with partnership with OSD has been very tight, and it's been great. They've worked alongside of us and pushed us, and it's really made it that much more of an interesting and unique project through their work. So it's been very integral to this project.
Well, one further specific dimension of this ecological approach is identified by something you referred to, almost the evidence-based approach or the performance-based approach of natural light in a space, of fresh air in a space, of even the choice of particular materials, of high tactility and we'll call them healthy materials. And this is emerging out of a body of thought or an understanding of the biophilic understanding of architecture, which, by the way, I will say to the audience, even the U.S. Department of Defense is now able to use the word biophilia with confidence, which says a great deal about this movement into popular appeal. I wonder if you could comment on that way of thinking about the interior in particular, and the way, if you were to take even one room that comes to mind, and how, in a sense, that biophilic understanding animates the design decisions there.
Sure. Well, I think, there is as you can see in the plan and so forth, there is these gestures, right, that, welcome you in. And so you never approach this building frontally, it's obliquely. We slide into a forest, right? We move along the edge. And so sliding in along the edge to the lobby in particular, and how you're greeted, right? The door in which you will grab, that handle will be special. And, it's really the handshake of the building and then bringing you in. And I think the big move for us was to take the idea of the cave and the stone base and bring that into the floor as stone. So there's a beautiful analogy there. But then the canopy, the forest, is brought in too, right? Now translated from the brass fins to this beautiful CNC milled ribs of pecan, right? And it's something that has contour to it as well. And I think all of that working together, that's all you're coming in contact with, except the plaster walls and art. There isn't all of the bells and whistles and everything you often get with a building. We've sort of made that go away. And so you feel welcomed. And I think that's to me, how you create a kind of, how would you say, an atmospheric kind of condition where you don't have the distractions that, oh, this is a building. We're trying to transport you, that you're in the in-between, right, world of what is man-made and what is nature-made. And combining those two conditions, I think, can put us at ease and put us in a sense of feeling good.
Well, of course, we have, as we discussed with the whole landscape aspect of the project, we have sort of this direct biophilia, a lot of very deliberate outdoor and indoor spaces that are landscaped. The spaces between, right, are important. But with respect to a specific room or space that maybe reflects that idea, I would say it's really, it goes back to this idea of abstracting this idea of shelter and the sense of security that provides. And really that's where we've been consistent with this use of, we're also using brass on the project, and with this idea of this bluff shelter as this big gesture of a safe space or a space of healing. Just, it's not only happening at the entrance to the building, but all of the exterior soffits, all of the porches and coverings on the building on the west side, the student plaza space, they're all identified by this brass soffit above. So there's this sort of visual cue to yourself about this consistency of protection and shelter and safety So it's not a direct biophilia, but it was an intention to correlate a natural material to a particular type of covering a shelter that provides this sense of security for people.
I would say, and I'll ask again for both of you to comment on this, we are steps away from a significant, but small but significant house designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, so we're not without that immediate architectural reference. We're, of course, somehow suffused with the example of Fay Jones in the region. Much of what you've suggested, a nature-centered architecture, an architecture that seeks atmosphere, an architecture that seeks a certain reliance on organic materials and so forth. Would you find in your own education and your own thinking through, is there a resonance there with at least both of those architects, if not others?
Sure. I once had a conversation with an architectural critic from England, and he kept, querying, well, why don't you teach Frank Lloyd Wright in school, and why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing this? You don't care about your own architect. And I just looked at him in a quizzical way and said, we're Americans. Frank Lloyd Wright, Fay Jones, they're in our blood, and that's the difference. I feel like in some ways they have been the models, but I also feel like as an architect I've been born into that. And I don't have to overanalyze it or whatever. It's like, feel like a fish in water, right? And that water is Frank Lloyd Wright, the principles of Wright, the principles of Fay, and others that help guide us in a way. Now, the idea is not to do Fay Jones or Frank Lloyd Wright. They're the masters of that. We have to find our own voice, and that's what we're attempting to do, but be guided by the principles, right? And to take the world as it's given to us and then represent it on our terms under those principles. And so I think it's been very important to how we think about the work that we do.
Yeah, that's well stated. Having grown up in Arkansas and attended the Fay Jones School from 1987 to 1992, it's hard for me to say I wasn't influenced by the work and the education of Fay Jones and the impact he's had on, I think, broadly our architectural community in this state, but also, to me personally. So this whole idea, even from the curriculum at the time and just experiencing his work and the influence he's had on the state and region, it certainly has an impact, I think, on our practice of this idea of connection to nature, burrowing into the ground, using stone, using wood, using natural forms and materials as a way to sort of connect to nature. I think that comes naturally, I think, at least from my experience with my own context of my education and my career. But I think Marlon's right. It would be a disservice to sort of duplicate those kind of things. They are the masters, right? You have to find your own way of interpreting those big ideas they had about this connection to nature.
But I just want to say they paved the way. The whole idea of the cave in the forest is so basic, so primordial, if you think about it, as a place to begin, to think about building, right, and making architecture. And I think in every project that was Fay's source of inspiration in some form. And I think it's probably the greatest lesson that he's imparted, at least to many of us in my generation.
But alongside the references to nature, there's, for both of you, a very clear statement of seeking to provide each individual who comes into the institute, each individual who comes into the school, with a sense of their own dignity and then the dignity of the purpose of those institutions. And this is can be quite an abstract approach, but how are you approaching that idea of dignity in architectural terms?
Well, I mean, abstraction for us is not about removing things or making things minimal. It's a means of connecting to place, right? And using an economy of means for a maximum of meaning. I think the idea is to put the individual, and this kind of relates to the whole health approach, as the center, right? As they're in charge. So when you come in to buildings, and especially the healthcare buildings and something like Whole Health or the School of Medicine, I think is to show that they're worth the all the effort, right? And that there has been a fidelity to craft, and thought. And in craft, there's care, right? And so there's great care in the work. And I think people don't have to be an architect or something to sense that and feel that they have been thought about, right? And so in some ways that dignifies their presence there, that they're important enough that one would do that, right? And I think, and I relayed this earlier today, but we had an experience at the Welcome Health Center in Fayetteville where it's a renovation, but it was in an old county health building, really run down. It's for the underserved in the community. And we built this new healthcare center out of remnants of red oak that we could find, and remnants of floor tiles, but in a beautiful way, filled with natural light. And one of the board members told us that, every day when we were in that old county building, that old medical building, we would lose 2 to 3 rolls of toilet paper, 2 to 3 rolls of paper towels every day. And he said, we've been open now for 5 years. We haven't lost a single thing. And I said, well, what's that about? And he goes, it's about respect. We give respect. People show respect. And I feel like we have something that respects folks from all walks of life. And now that we show that respect. So that's what architecture should do, is kind of dignify and show respect to those who darken and come through the doors.
Yeah, it's this question earlier, and I would agree that I think dignity is an important aspect of designing spaces for people. And I think one way that you can sort of be disrespectful to a people or place is to sort of ignore the culture in the place in which it's built, to sort of disrespect that in that way. So I think, in a way, this challenge that we had to reflect the Ozarks and the culture of Northwest Arkansas, I hope we've done that well. I think, I guess we'll have to see if we've been successful there. But I think there's dignity in that, and in trying to reflect the essence of a place and the culture and the environment in which it's built. And I hope we've done that well.
Yeah. Find resonance
Right.
with a place, I think, is important.
We have the lights up a bit, so it's possible to see hands raised. If there are those questions from the audience, we managed to elicit 2 or 3 from our students earlier today. I'm hopeful that slightly older students can surpass that number. Questions? Observations? Yes, ma'am, here in front.
Oh, boy.
We were driving down here this evening, and we went by the the new med school, and we drove by the Whole Health Institute, and then we came to Crystal Bridges, and we both commented on how well all of these buildings played together. And I was just curious if there was any discussion of that among you.
And you are? Who are you? We did this a year ago, something similar, Alice, and I had seen the building in renderings. I remember giving a call to the office, said, wow, that's a great building, you guys. I hope this gets built. It's fantastic. That's the only thing we've ever talked about. I mean, it really,
Right.
It's just strange. I know you said there's no coincidence in health care, but sometimes there is in architecture.
In the South, yeah.
Yeah,
Both
yeah.
coincidences in the South.
That's true. In the South, yeah. No, I don't know. I think I don't know. What would you draw inspiration other than this idea of art and nature here? Again, the origins is we're here in the epicenter, and again the challenge, and I think we both were challenged. I mean, we had prismatic wood trusses, glassed-in trusses stacked up. We'd won this competition. We were so excited about it. And like I say, Alice said, well, that's quite lovely and lovely concepts, but I don't like boxes, and it's like, oh, okay. And so we had to totally rethink that. And so, yes, we went to the organic, but we also noticed the forms here, both, somewhat platonic and organic. and there's something gestural about it, and so part of the gesture was had mitigating, let's say, between the museum, but also between the natural terrain and where we were located, the very specificities of that particular site. And I think it's safe to say, had we been on your site and had you been on our site, we would both have different buildings, right? So I think that's where it came from.
Well, and Alice, Marlon and I are friends and acquaintances, but we did not collaborate in any way. And honestly, it is striking some of the similarities about themes, about shelter and this sort of natural, these bluff shelter and cave ideas and this brass. And we didn't collaborate at all. And honestly think that the commonality here is the visionary. It's you, right? You challenged us with some of the same things, and I think some of that's coming through in some consistency with form and ideas and concepts. To me, that's the common thread, I think.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a great sin in a way to have this here and then to ignore it and say, I'm just going to make the statement. I'm interested in, the iconic on strictly in this sort of detached way. And I just don't think that's how either one of us work or our practices work. We seek resonance where the places that we're building, and with the material culture, and again with the natural world here, and so it made sense. Yeah, and whereas let's say in a suburban condition, in the middle of shopping malls and strip malls and so forth, it might have been a very different response, right? But not here. You couldn't do it. What else could we do, right? It's great. It's just common sense, yeah.
Right. It is often said, I'm sure it's been said in this room before, that even to make good architecture requires a great client. So,
yeah, and yeah, and I would add, not a spectator, but a participant, and that's the big difference. Having an engaged client is all you can ask for.
I would note, in a somewhat lesser note, you both have been affiliated with the same school for quite a long time.
That's true. That's true.
Other questions? Yes, in the back.
Just want to take a moment, take a pause for the cause, and say thank you for all the inspiration with all the fantastic architecture here in the city. I've grown up just on Main Street, just right above the ravine here, and have had the privilege of watching the past 15 years unfold in Bentonville. And it's just fills my heart so much to watch the town be known for more things than just Walmart. And now it's moving into cycling, and then to art, and now into architecture and into health. And so it's just amazing to watch the town grow and mature into that. And thank you so much for dedicating your team's brain power and education to the betterment of the city. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
I think I saw this hand first.
I guess I have to also echo the appreciation. Thank you to Alice for pushing for these innovative buildings and these progressive health ideals. Thank you to the architects for the self-evident passion that you're putting into these projects, because me as a consumer of these spaces, I'm sure I'm really going to enjoy them, so thank you. My question is centered around a very simple statement. It's, you don't know what you don't know. And with these unique, bespoke buildings, I assume there's a lot you don't know. So when you started to get into these projects, have you come away with any macro level takeaways of what you didn't know that you do now that you could share with us?
We can do curves if challenged. I mean, Alice and her team have no idea how terrified I was, and Ati had to listen to me. I don't know, we're the masters of dumb boxes. What are we going to do? So coming away to know that, you can make architecture with something other than a 90-degree angle is pretty good. That's a good takeaway. I think I learned a lot about structure a little bit. I never was very good in structure at school, but I still not totally figured out how this building is structured. I'm not sure that Troy with Baldwin and Shell is either, but there are very few columns. It is essentially a suspended bridge that spans from 3 rocks, basically 3 rocks, 2 of stone and 1 of brass. But it's a beautiful structure, but I still can't wrap my head around it. Basically I didn't know, and I still don't know. Sorry, but I kind of know. So yeah.
I would say, the first step there is to try to put your arms around what you don't know, and then surround yourself with people and teams who bring that experience to the table. Green roofs they're not common, and so we surrounded ourselves with consultants and contractors who know what they're doing to help us build that. And of course, your reference to structure. Of course, as you know, on the medical school we have quite the cantilever, so there's quite a bit of they still have quite the cantilever. So there's a lot of unique aspects of I think both of these projects where we've sort of had to embrace the unknown, but move ahead with confidence with people who are skilled in what they do.
Yeah, I think surrounding yourself with good people. What's the saying? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yeah, so gotta get out of the room. Yeah.
1 or maybe 2 more. Yes?
So good evening. I'm Dr. Yogi Hernandez Suarez. I'm one of the new deans at the medical school.
Yay.
And I can't thank you enough for such a thrilling introduction to the place where I get to work and teach. I want to circle back to the term radical. I want to just put a fine point on how extraordinary it will be for our medical students to learn in this environment. There is no place, I think, on planet Earth where this has this system of wellness and thoughtfulness and intentionality exists. Most of us train in the setting of illness and pain. And so I do believe that this will foster a different product. My question is, in less than a year, I'll be addressing 48 students who will be the beneficiaries and stewards of this environment. What do you want me to tell them?
Don't judge too harshly, right? I do think that first class that'll be pretty telling about the curriculum, about the program, and about the space, about the culture of the school and a culture of the place. And we should listen to them. That's what I say. We should listen to what they have to say after they've experienced the building and the curriculum.
I think that's good. I mean, with our students, it's always open your hearts and open your minds. These are students that, speaking of radical, have decided to ask the question, how might it be otherwise? What if? What if I don't go this route? What if I go this route? So they're pioneers in a way. And I think you should encourage that pioneering spirit to continue throughout their time in the confines of the school to enjoy the beauty of questions and spend more time trying to form the right questions and trying to get the right answers. And I think that'll help them a great deal as they move through.
I think being alerted to the passage of time, I'll maybe conclude this way, along with thanks to both Wesley and Marlon and their entire staffs and all the consultants for the work they're doing, and for all of you for attending. Every spring I teach the required course in Principles of Architecture. 85 students in a lecture hall, which is very difficult to lecture anymore. So I teach it as a seminar. And the final exam for the students after 15 weeks of readings and discussion consists of one question with a bit of a preamble, which is to say, over in the School of Law, it's proposed that the ethos of an education in law is justice. Over in the School of Medicine, which of course for us is up until now in Little Rock, the ethos of a School of Medicine is healing. So I asked the students, what is the ethos of a School of Architecture and Design? And you have a week to think about it and write up a 2,000-word essay answering that question. And the best answers that have come back, because there's nothing wrong in a sense, in this, as far as an answer goes. But the best responses that have come back are a student clearly perplexed with the whole thing has simply said, the central ethos of a school of architecture and design is justice and healing. And I found that to be so wonderfully simple and at the same time compelling, because I find this myself to be motivating and inspirational. And this is where there's common cause between the School of Architecture and Design and the School of Medicine, and I look forward to our conversations, which are ongoing, about how all of us at the university in Fayetteville can be better partners and good partners with you. I think it begins here with the representatives of our school, the representatives of the profession in the state, working with such good conscience to these ends. And it certainly implicates all of you as well in participants just by walking through the grounds to come and being, in a sense, observers and participants and engaged with this entire process of bringing this fantastic campus to being. So with that, again, thank you, Marlon. Thank you, Wesley. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Ken and Liz, Mailco. And I know I've left out one sponsor. I'm so sorry. But I want to thank Crystal Bridges for their hospitality and our ongoing collaboration. Be well this evening and into the future. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.